Hi, boys and girls. It's Mr. Wasemann again, and today we are going to be once again researching our endangered species topics. And a question to you: what is wrong with this picture? What do you see? Well, I see a polar bear, but that polar bear looks out of place. It's roaming around in what looks to be a very temperate climate area. Where's the snow? You see, when we think about polar bears, we think about polar bears rolling around on snow-crusted hills, or maybe, sitting around drinking a Coke in the Arctic. Well, unfortunately, for polar bears, this is starting to become their reality, where climate change and other factors have impacted their living space, their habitat, and they are finding it harder and harder to survive. And unfortunately, we start to see scenes like this, where polar bears start to encroach into human settlements, like in, say, Alaska or in Greenland or Canada. When wild animals start to invade human living spaces, that's when trouble starts to brew. And that's where we are today with our species project, Threats to Survival. What is making this species endangered? The word endanger means to be placed in danger. What is causing this animal to wither in the wild? And there are lots of different reasons why an animal species could be in decline. Let's take a look at a couple of very famous examples. The giant panda famously is very picky in its diet, which means that it only eats one kind of food, bamboo. Now, if you go on to the World Wildlife Fund page, they have a section that specifically points out what threatens them. And it says here, habitat loss. China's Yangtze Basin region holds the panda's primary habitat. Infrastructure development, such as dams, roads, and railways, is increasingly fragmenting and isolating panda populations, preventing pandas from finding new bamboo forests and potential mates. So people come in and they build roads, they build dams, they build railroad tracks, and it cuts up their habitat, making it harder for pandas to move around. When you cut something down to build something for people, it impacts all the species who used to live in that wild wilderness area. So forest loss and habitat loss is what's causing the decline in pandas. Okay, that's one way that animals can be threatened. Now, this is a pangolin. It's a funny looking thing. It kind of looks like an aardvark. And pangolins are one of the most threatened animals in the wild. It's one of the most trafficked mammals in the world, meaning that hunters, poachers go out of their way to find, capture, and kill these animals. Okay, pangolins are in high demand in countries like China and Vietnam. Their meat is considered a delicacy, and the pangolin scales are used in traditional medicine and folk remedies to treat a range of ailments from asthma to rheumatism and arthritis. Okay, so sometimes an animal is threatened because it is very profitable to hunt and kill them. Many animals are hunted for their pelts. Other animals are hunted for their as food. And then in the case of the bison, they were hunted as a way to control human populations. Okay. Historically, American bison were all over the western United States, but there was a couple of things that happened. One is that there was habitat loss as people moved west and started settling and establishing towns and cities and farms and ranches. It kind of drove the buffalo or bison herds away. But there's also, unfortunately, a very dark, excuse me, historic reason why buffaloes declined, and that is our relationship with Native American tribes. You see, as Americans who were originally from the eastern part of the United States expanded west. These are Americans from European descent. As they expanded west, they continued to encroach upon the Native Americans' land, their hunting grounds, their tribal homes, and so forth. And many Native American tribes and groups relied heavily on the bison as their livelihood, not just hunting it for food, but used the bison for all manner of reasons, bones, their hides for clothing and for shelter. And, and, and the European American people from the East knew this. And unfortunately, what would happen is, in order to drive out the Native Americans who were occupying lands that Americans from the East wanted to settle, they would kill off the buffalo. And as you can see in this graphic right here, the decline of the buffalo population was staggering. There was estimations that were 60 million bison before 1800. And by 1900, it was down to 300, 60 million to 300. And that was because of people, specifically Americans from the East who are trying to drive out Native Americans from the West. And that, unfortunately, impacted the buffalo or the bisons. So when we look at threats, okay, there can be a number of reasons why. Okay, so when you look at the slide, it says animal name are considered to be endangered species because reason one, and animal's name is also endangered because reason two and reason three. So when I go to my leatherback sea turtle page, there's a couple of reasons why the leatherback sea turtle is in decline. Okay, it says they are declining for a number of reasons. Habitat loss due to human overuse or pollution makes it harder for mothers to find good places to lay their eggs. If you build beachfront property along the shoreline and people spend time on the beach, it makes it harder for female leatherback sea turtles to find peace to lay their eggs and have those eggs be undisturbed. Also says here, humans also harvest these eggs to sell as food. Okay. Leatherbacks sometimes are hurt or killed when they become tangled in commercial fishing nets. Now, this is a common problem with lots of species in the ocean. Fishermen look for certain types of fish to sell as food to other humans. There are certain fish species that we consider to be delicacies, ones that we like to eat. Now, there are other animals in the ocean that we don't like to eat because we don't find them tasty. So when fishermen draw their nets through the ocean, it's kind of a blanket way of catching species. They draw their nets, and whatever falls in the net gets caught. And if it's pulled out of the water, and if it's something that humans don't eat, they'll just throw it out. And unfortunately, a lot of times being caught in a fisherman's net can kill an animal inadvertently. So even though we catch it, we don't necessarily keep it to eat. It also says, finally, some turtles will die from accidentally eating indigestible garbage like plastic bags that appear to look like jellyfish. So on the picture here at the top, we see a jellyfish. Down on the bottom graphic here, this is a decaying plastic bag. This is a plastic bag like the ones you would get from Walmart or Meijer or Home Depot that had some items in it that you purchased, and then it gets recycled or more often than not thrown away. And sometimes garbage ends up in the ocean. And over time, these bags kind of fall apart and fray at the ends. And as you can see, to a turtle, it would kind of look like a jellyfish. So if a a sea turtle eats this bag, it could get lodged in its throat and it could suffocate the turtle and it could die. Or it could be swallowed by the turtle and then not be digested properly, meaning that what came in did not come out. And if that happens over time, animals will sometimes ingest plastic, and that will slowly poison and kill them as well. So what is causing the threats to survival? Okay, so those are the questions you need to answer for yourself. Okay, so the American bison are considered to be endangered species because primarily because they were hunted almost into extinction. Okay, so that might be the primary reason, but there was also other reasons too. Okay, so American bison are also endangered because of, as we learned before, habitat loss. And being hunted for food. Okay, now I should go back and make a distinction. The reason why they were hunted in the first place as a way to deter Native Americans from staying on their desirable land. Now, the bottom part of this slide says there are only about blank number of animal name left in the wild. Okay, so there is a distinction here. We need to know about how many of these animals are left. Okay, so when I go back to my leatherback sea turtle slide show, I go back to this slide and it says, since leatherback sea turtles have such a wide distribution throughout the world, it is difficult to estimate and track exactly how many are left in the wild. In some places along Atlantic coastal countries, their number appears to be stable or increasing. However, the Pacific population is declining at an alarming rate. Okay, so scientists can't be exactly sure how many there are. However, when we go look at the bison statistics, scientists have been tracking this very carefully, and since it's a land-based animal and, bison are really big, so they're easy to spot, it's been very easy for them to track it. So in 1900, there was only about 300 bison left in the United States. Now, over the course of the last century, the 20th century, I should say, there have been efforts to conserve and increase the bison population. So now it has slowly crept back up to 360,000. Okay, and that's in part because there have been national reserves and there have been places set aside that have been designated for bison to roam, so a wildlife preserve that will allow them to grow and mate and live in relative peace without being bothered by people. Okay, so I would go back here and put in a number, 360,000 of, and since bison are pluralized as well as singular, we can just say there are only about 360,000 American bison. Oops, I deleted where it said it up here at the top. Left in the wild. Okay, and I am going to make the distinction. This is up from a mere 300 bison from 1900 when they were on the brink of extinction. Period. Boys and girls, unfortunately, you will find in your research that a vast number of the species that are endangered or on the brink of extinction are in large part because of human interaction. Whether we meant to do so, like with the pangolin, we are hunting them down because we desire them, inadvertently killing them off by destroying their habitat because we want to use the land for our own purposes, or we are going out of our way to hunt them because we see them as a pest. In any case, endangered species are threatened in the wild because of one or more reasons, and it is your job to figure out uh, what those reasons are and to list it in your research. Uh, we will continue to talk about threats to survival and what people are doing today to help your endangered species come back from the brink of extinction or to increase their survival rates in future tutorials. Until then, happy researching and keep on working. Thanks.